If you've got kids in the back seat and a mortgage tied to that family SUV sitting in your driveway, this is the video I wish someone had made before you signed the loan. Because somewhere out there right now, an SUV that looked perfect on the showroom floor is leaving its owner stranded on the Hume Highway, or quietly rusting through a wheel arch, or sitting in for a warranty claim on an electrical fault nobody can quite explain. I'm not guessing at any of this. Every vehicle on this list is backed by Australian recall notices from the Federal Vehicle Recalls Register, NHTSA complaint data, and the actual words of owners on product review sites and forums who lived through it. Today we're counting down 12 SUVs that could turn 2026 into the year you regret your car choice, from keep an eye on it all the way to how did this ever get signed off? Let's get into it. Number 12, the GWM Haval Jolion. It's the cheapest way into a new SUV in this country, and for a lot of buyers, that's exactly the appeal. But the Jolion's only been on our roads since 2021, so nobody really knows how it ages. What we do know from current owners is a familiar pattern: dual clutch hesitation at low speed, throttle-by-wire behavior that feels disconnected, and the odd electronic gremlin that pops up and vanishes just as fast. GWM backs it with a long warranty, which buys you time to find out if you got a good one or a bad one. It's not a disaster. It's the budget end of the market, asking you to be the test pilot. Number 11, the MG ZS. MG built its Australian comeback on being the cheapest SUV in almost every segment it competes in, and the ZS has sold accordingly. The trouble is what turns up once the odometer climbs. Owners report head gasket failures serious enough to mix coolant and oil, jerky dual clutch gear changes that some dealers can only partly fix with a software flash, and enough repeat dealership visits that MG came dead last in one major reliability survey. Resale value takes a hit too, because everyone shopping secondhand knows the reputation. It gets worse from here. Number 10, the Nissan X-Trail. This one stings because Nissan's reputation for tough, long-lived engines is real. It's the CVT gearbox that's the problem. Owners describe a steel drive belt that wears and slips, causing shuddering acceleration, and a fault code some forums have nicknamed the kill code, a transmission fault so severe, some owners say the car can lose drive with no warning. One Sydney owner went public describing exactly that scenario. Nissan Australia has quietly handled cases individually rather than issuing a blanket fix, and whirlpool threads about a possible class action have been running for years. A great engine wrapped around a transmission, a lot of owners no longer trust. Number 9, the Chery Tiggo 8. Chery's been chasing legitimacy in Australia with sharp pricing and a long warranty, and on paper the Tiggo 8 looks the part. In practice, it's had 3 separate recalls in 3 years. The most recent, in June 2026, affects over 5,500 vehicles because a brake pipe can rub against the engine and leak fluid, cutting braking performance. 2 of Chery's 3 recalls now involve brakes. That's not a rounding error. That's a pattern, and it's exactly the kind of pattern that punishes a brand trying to convince Australians it's ready for the mainstream. Number 8, the Mitsubishi Outlander. Popular, practical, and hit with recall after recall regardless. Australian owners have seen a seatbelt anchorage fault, a rear-view camera that can freeze or drop out completely, and, as recently as 2025, a steering wheel touch sensor fault affecting almost 7,500 vehicles that can stop the driver assist system correctly detecting hands on the wheel. None of these individually is catastrophic. Together, they paint a picture of a vehicle that keeps needing the same kind of attention. Recall notice after recall notice, years after it first went on sale. Quick favor before we get into the back half of this list. If you're getting something out of this, tap that like button. Costs you nothing, and it helps this reach someone who's about to sign for one of the next 6. Cheers. Right, onwards, because this is where it gets serious. Number 7, the LD VD90. A lot of buyers choose the D90 the same way they choose LDV's Utes, for the space and the price, and they get a similar experience. One Queensland owner, less than 3 years into ownership, had already replaced the alternator, the battery, and the front differential, all under warranty, on a car that hadn't even been off-road. Add in scattered rust complaints on wheel arches and seams, and owners describing sudden power loss that drops the car into limp mode on the highway, and you've got a familiar LDV story wearing an SUV badge instead of a tray. Number 6. The GWM Haval H6, the bigger brother to the Jolion, and the H6 carries a bigger version of the same growing pains. Owners report the GT variant dropping into limp mode with the engine light flashing, adaptive cruise control that slams the brakes on for corners at highway speed, whether you want it to or not, and a steady trickle of complaints about oil consumption and coolant leaking into the engine after a couple of years. GWM has agreed to warranty fixes, including full engine replacements in some cases, but that's exactly the point. A car shouldn't need a new engine at 3 years old to prove the brand will stand behind it. Number 5. The Tesla Model Y. I have to include it because the gap between the software-defined future it's sold on and the build quality some owners actually receive is too wide to ignore. In the past year alone, Tesla has recalled Model Ys for reverse lights that don't work, a horn that can't sound because of a loose ground wire, missing certification labels, and a battery pack contactor fault serious enough to cause a sudden loss of drive power while moving. Owners on top of that report panel gaps wide enough to let water into the boot, and paint that seems to scratch if you look at it wrong. For a car built around software updates, fixing everything, an awful lot of its problems still need a trip to a service center. Number 4. The Jeep Grand Cherokee. Jeep wanted Australia's mid-size SUV buyer to fall for off-road capability wrapped in genuinely handsome styling, and plenty have. What they're also buying into is a documented electrical weak point called the TIPM, the module that controls the fuel pump, the windows, and the locks, which can fail and stall the engine outright. Add a rear coil spring recall covering over 330,000 vehicles in the US after springs were installed out of position during assembly, and, for the plug-in 4xe variant specifically, a battery fire risk recall serious enough that owners were told to park outside and stop charging. A capable SUV tangled up in a brand that keeps needing to fix the basics. Number 3. The Land Rover Defender and Discovery. A premium badge is supposed to buy you premium reliability. Data says otherwise. The modern Defender logs some of the highest electrical complaint rates of any SUV on sale, and the recurring villain is the DC-DC converter, the unit that steps 48 volts down to 12 to keep the low-voltage system alive. When it fails, owners describe the car losing 12-volt power mid-drive, with the transmission shifting itself into neutral and the vehicle eventually losing power steering and exterior lighting. It's a 5-figure repair bill wrapped in a badge that's supposed to justify the price with dependability. Lovely when it behaves, genuinely frightening when it doesn't. Number 2. The Ford Everest. I can already hear the defenders of Australia's favorite big family SUV yelling at the screen. Hear me out. The current Everest shares its bones and its problems with the country's best-selling ute. It's been hit, alongside the Ranger, with a combined 13,000 vehicle recall over a V6 camshaft sprocket that can fracture and stall the engine mid-drive, a near 21,000 vehicle Ranger and Everest transmission recall, and a separate fault where the transmission can shift into park at low speed without the brake lights illuminating. On top of all of that, Ford only worked out in October 2025 and only got the replacement part into dealers in early 2026. That a factory assembly fault at its UK engine plant had been causing a turbo oil return line to leak since 2022. That's 4 years of Everests built with a defect Ford didn't have a fix for. It's still a genuinely capable family SUV. Just don't assume popular means problem-free. Number 1. The Toyota Kluger, the most trusted badge in the country, on the vehicle Australian families buy specifically because it's supposed to be the safe, boring, bulletproof choice. And that's exactly why it tops this list. In 2026, Toyota recalled almost 34,500 current generation Klugers because the second-row seat recliner mechanism might not fully lock, meaning in a crash, or even hard braking, the seat back could move and put a rear passenger at risk. This isn't an obscure edge case. It's Toyota's third best-selling large SUV last year, built specifically for the families who trusted the badge enough to never think twice. The Kluger will probably still outlast most vehicles on this list. But buying one purely because it wears a Toyota badge, and assuming that alone means it can't let you down, is exactly how people get caught out. Even the most trusted name in the business had to send a recall letter to 34,000 families. So there you have it, 12 SUVs that could turn into a 2026 regret, from budget bargains still finding their feet, to a genuine icon that had to admit its own seats weren't good enough. Now, I want to hear from you. Which one is sitting in your driveway right now? And if you're nodding along, or you're already typing out a defense of your own SUV, the comments are open. Tell me the good and the ugly. If this saved you from a costly mistake, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Drive safe, buy smarter.